latest issue of The West Wing celebrates the deep diversity of experience and background that we're lucky to have in the DA's office. Walking around the halls, I hear Spanish, dialects of Chinese, Vietnamese. As far as I can tell, we have employees from every continent except Australia and Antarctica. I doubt even George Gascon's office has someone from Antarctica. Our prosecutors are deeply involved in such organizations as the Black Prosecutors Association, the LGBT Bar Association, and the National Association of Asian and Pacific Island Prosecutors, more of which we'll learn later. About 60% of this office are women. The people we serve come from all over the globe, and so do we. Today, I'm talking to two employees who came from disparate parts of the world, Russia and Taiwan. Both came here as young children struggling with the language and with the culture. Today, they are prosecutors, American prosecutors. From a bustling city on the banks of the Volga, Masha Gershonovich, danced her way to the U.S. She came here to make her mark on the world of ballroom dancing, but there was a darker, more complex reason why she moved here at the age of 14. What happened to your great-grandmother? Tell me about your great-grandmother.
So she had a very long and at times very happy and at times very unhappy life. When my grandma, so her child was about 2 or 3, she was arrested by NKVD at the time, then KGB, now a different name, but the same organization doing kind of similar things. And she was arrested. She was proclaimed what they called the enemy of the state back in the day. And she didn't reunite with her daughter, my grandma, for almost a decade. My grandma moved from home to home, living with different relatives, living with her grandma at points and an aunt. And some people were good to her, some people weren't so good. But she got her mom back. I don't remember exactly how many years later, but I think it was almost a decade. They lived together for a couple of years in what, it was still USSR, but what is Ukraine now. And then she was arrested again, and my grandma didn't reunite with her till she was in her early 20s, I think.
What were her crimes, Masha?
I don't know of anything other than being of Jewish descent at the time.
So explain to me that. Tell me about anti-Semitism in Russia. Is it overt?
Less so now, definitely. I think a lot more, it was a lot more okay to display it back in the day, even when my mom was growing up in the 70s and 80s, when I was born in 1990. And people now know it's better to hide it, but so some people put an effort into that, but you still get phrases like that are sort of maybe meant to be jokes about how Jewish people are smart, or they, they're a certain way with money or things like that. And some people still think it's okay to say those things and just kind of joke around. But there isn't very many Jewish people left in Russia to joke around with. Going to school, I was the only Jewish person in my class. There was another girl who was sort of half Jewish by her dad, which is considered not Jewish, even though I didn't know this distinction growing up for a long time. And that was it. And growing up, I did have a sense that it's safer to hide it. I did go to a Jewish kindergarten until, for a couple of years, until I started school. And I remember my grandpa, we didn't have a car, so my grandpa would walk me there, and he would be kind of very careful about, and just aware of his surroundings, as everyone should be, instead of kind of being on their phones, as we see these days. But always kind of very careful. That kindergarten building, we had this huge metal door, which you wouldn't associate with a bunch of kids in there.
Sure.
But
Were
that was
you
the case.
aware of your Jewishness? Were you aware of the anti-Semitism that was around you, or were you too young for it to really strike a blow?
I think it got really sort of internalized from my family. Like my mom mostly, she has such a deep, engraved fear of being Jewish that I think that's something that's definitely rubbed off on me growing up, and just knowing stories and knowing what happened to my great grandma. I think that definitely just it's in the back of your mind. But after I moved, and a couple of years after, there was a moment where it really hit me that it's not something to hide, but it's something really actually cool that I'm proud of. And I got this t-shirt. I think I bought it in Israel probably on my last trip, but I have this bright green t-shirt and it says, "Don't worry, be Jewish." And I actually don't have it anymore because my little sister, who is 11 and who just moved in January, took it, and she now wears it very proudly. And I don't think she has nearly the same concerns or feelings that I grew up with. Partially, I think, because my mom has gotten a little bit better as far as her fears, maybe, but partially because I think she didn't grow up with it as much. She never met our great grandma. Our great grandma passed away when I was 3, so my sister obviously doesn't know her. But yeah, she likes that t-shirt.
Does the fact that your family suffered persecution play at all into your sense of justice as a prosecutor?
I think so. I think a lot of the times when I talked, whether it's some kind of personal statement essay for a job, or just talking to people about my family's history, my great-grandma's dealings with the justice system and with courtrooms, people often seem surprised that I didn't go into defense rather than prosecution, and they see sort of a disconnect between the two. But I do think that I do absolutely think that due process is very important, and I think both defense attorneys and prosecutors were all part of that. And a lot of the times the cases require more than just aggressive prosecution. Some absolutely do, but other cases need a prosecutor that would take sort of a longer look at that and see what justice is in this case. And in different cases, it means different things. And that's what I think is very important in our job.
I'm so happy you chose the right side.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlie Wong has done many wonderful things as a prosecutor for Santa Clara County, but we're here today to talk about an effort aimed at diversity that he and his fellow prosecutor decided to do 7 years ago at dinner. Charlie, tell me about that dinner. What did you eat? No, I'm not interested in what you ate. But tell me about that dinner where you decided to create an organization.
Sure. We were at a community event where I ran into another prosecutor from a different county, and who was also API, and we got started talking about our jobs professionally and how unique it is for an Asian American to be a prosecutor and a trial lawyer and be interested in this area of the law. And we realized we had a lot of commonalities, a lot of similar struggles, and a lot of kind of things that are unique to the Asian American perspective that we can't really share in, that it's not as really readily understandable by everyone else.
Tell me, just before you get into the launching of NAPIPA, tell me what those commonalities, what those challenges are, just a little bit.
Family background, the expectations of kids growing up is, you go into engineering or you become a doctor, or if you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a corporate lawyer, and laws, I wouldn't say frowned upon, but it's certainly not not a profession that's encouraged among the Asian American household, at least the household that I grew up in, and my colleague from a different county. So we talked about that, and we talked about how few of us there are in the courtroom, and how judges are not used to seeing advocates from the Asian American community, and how it was so different and unique for them to kind of adjust to seeing someone who's capable in court.
Right.
As an Asian American.
And so you decided to...
we decided, hey, there's enough of us here now, especially in the Bay Area. Maybe there's more of us who are interested in talking about the commonalities and struggles and things that we can do with each other to help each other become better, and in turn help our communities kind of integrate and understand the criminal justice area of our world.
And thus was born NAPIPA. And tell me about how NAPIPA has grown in the 7 years since that dinner.
So from that dinner, we started out in Santa Clara County. I'm really proud of that fact. Many of my colleagues here in this office share the same vision, have the same experiences, and we had the opportunity to grow under DA Jeff Rosen, who supported us and endorsed this idea and provided us with all the things that we needed. And we are really grateful for him to get that start. And because of DA Rosen's support, we were able to galvanize and bring DAs from other counties in and share this vision with them. And that's kind of how it grew from there. So since starting from Santa Clara County, we now have 5 chapters. We call it the Northern California chapter. Right. We have the Southern California chapter, the San Diego chapter, the Chicago chapter, and the New York chapter. And what started out at maybe 20 to 30 people at dinner is now turned into an organization of 500 or so members. Wow. And we are seeking, if things go well, to add a 6th chapter in New Jersey later this year. Where
do you see NAPIPA in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Where do you see it going, and what sort of influence do you think that you'd like it to have?
If we continue with this progress and everyone's still committed to the vision of helping each other and helping our communities, our Asian American communities, I'd really like NAPIPA to be at the forefront of all issues that relate to criminal justice in the Asian American community. I'd like NAPIPA to take a more prominent role in terms of the National Asian American Lawyers Association, otherwise known as NAPABA. I'd really like us to integrate more into being more influential in terms of not just social activities, but creating or having a voice in terms of legislation, criminal justice legislation being provided, being a voice for crime victims, and whether there's an issue, when there's an issue nationwide, NAPIPA is ready to address it with our many chapters in many different geographic locations.
I'd like to circle back around. You were born in Taipei.
Yes.
You moved to Seoul as a young boy?
When I was 2, yeah.
Mm-hmm. How did you even think about becoming a lawyer, let alone a prosecutor?
So I have a long history of just public service in my family.
Tell me about it.
So my grandfather was a general under Chiang Kai-shek. My father is a diplomat, and it just came naturally. Like, what I was going to do after college was something related to public service. Right. I didn't quite know what that was. Helping people has been something that's just within my family. That's just what we do. None of us are super successful in business. We don't know anything about it. We just know what it means to help others and to serve. And so in college, I was a history major. I also had a double minor in Asian American Studies, as well as political science. And everything kind of just came together at that point. I realized a lot of unique Asian American experiences here. China's Exclusion Act, the Japanese internment, a lot of things happened to the Asian American community that was unjust. What can I do as an individual to change that, to make it better, to prevent things like that from happening in the future? Law school is the right way to do this. It's about advocating, it's about doing the right thing, it's about promoting justice. And so the idea of public service and promoting justice only led me to one conclusion. I wanted to go to law school and be a prosecutor so I can help this community, keep this community safe, be a voice for the victims who can't speak for themselves, and hold criminals accountable for their actions.
We're so lucky that you did. Thank you.
Thank you.